Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going local, Temecula.
Okay, yeah.
And it's a story that had everybody asking, like, who are the good guys?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating case study in
Yeah.
how perception and reality can really clash, especially when you're dealing with a group that claims to be like the solution to all the community's problems.
Right, and that is one Temecula Valley PAC,
Yeah.
better known as just one PAC,
Right.
which emerged in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
promising to bring stability and unity to a town facing some pretty heated divisions.
Yeah.
I mean, think school board meetings turned battlegrounds,
Yeah.
concerns about extremist ideologies creeping into local government.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
Intense.
a lot.
It was a lot.
And just to give everyone some context,
Okay.
this was the early 2020s,
Mm-hmm.
a time when hot-button issues like education
Oh, yeah.
and the role of religion in government were really, really firing people up.
Absolutely. And, for anyone who might not be totally familiar with the political landscape,
Yeah.
PAC, or Political Action Committee,
Right.
is basically a group that pools campaign funds to try and influence elections.
Mm-hmm.
They can campaign for specific candidates, advocate for certain policies,
Right.
definitely players in the game.
So they're big.
Yeah.
They're influential. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
into this already charged atmosphere,
Right.
steps one PAC,
Mm-hmm.
presenting themselves as like the voice of reason,
Okay.
the antidote to all this chaos.
Right.
They were all about like responsible policies,
Yeah.
nonpartisan governance.
Mm-hmm.
And on paper,
Sure.
they sounded like exactly what Temecula needed.
Makes sense.
And they even specifically called out another PAC,
Oh,
the
really?
Inland Empire Family PAC,
Okay.
as a perceived threat.
Interesting.
So they were really trying to position themselves in opposition to this other group.
Okay.
Um,
And they were good at it. I mean, they were really savvy with their messaging.
Right.
Tapping into that deep desire
Right.
for harmony and stability that a lot of folks were feeling.
Yeah.
Their introductory materials were like a masterclass in aspirational language.
I was going to say, it sounds very hallmarky,
It does.
very like feel good,
Mhm.
schools that embrace our youth,
Right.
a welcoming environment,
Mm.
equal protection for all.
Sounds great.
Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
Right.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
They didn't just talk the talk. They were really ready to walk the walk.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And to understand how they did that,
Mm-hmm.
we need to meet the players.
All right, let's do it.
So first up, we have Jeff PAC,
Okay.
the public face of one PAC,
All right.
a former journalist.
Oh,
He
interesting.
brought this real charisma and communication know-how to the table.
Well, yeah, with that background, right?
Right. You can tell that his background in media really shaped how...
One PAC got their message out there,
Makes sense?
and then there's David Maddox,
Okay.
more of a strategist working behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
less visible, but still incredibly influential
Yeah.
in shaping their actions.
Okay.
Then we've got two figures that were deeply embedded in the local education scene,
All right.
Jenny Scharf and Kelly Maxey,
Okay.
both teachers in the Temecula School District.
Got it.
Now, Scharf was super involved in one PAC's communication efforts.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing.
What's that?
She was also reportedly involved in legal action connected to school district policies.
Oh, wow.
So that immediately raised some eyebrows, like,
Huh.
potential conflict of interest here.
Definitely something to think about.
Right.
Yeah.
And Maxey was very active in petitioning and recall campaigns, even going after the school board president.
Oh, wow.
So you can see how having these folks right at the heart of one PAC
Yeah.
added another layer to the story.
Absolutely.
Totally. And then rounding out our main cast of characters is Julie Geary,
Okay.
a longtime Temecula resident,
Mm-hmm.
and interestingly enough,
Yeah.
a teacher in a neighboring district.
Okay.
She was the go-to person for community outreach for one PAC.
Gotcha.
So I'm curious, looking at this lineup,
Mm-hmm.
what stands out to you?
Well, I mean, on the surface, it seems like a pretty diverse group of concerned citizens, right?
Yeah.
But then when you dig a little deeper, you start to notice a pretty heavy concentration of people that are
Yes.
directly linked to the education system,
Uh-huh.
which isn't inherently a bad thing,
Right.
but it is something to keep in mind as we kind of unpack their actions a little
Right.
bit later.
So speaking of those actions, it wasn't just about crafting like feel-good slogans
Right.
and mission statements.
Mm-hmm.
In October of 2022, they put out this really urgent call to action on Facebook.
Oh.
Basically saying, hey, the Inland Empire family PAC is raising serious cash and gaining ground. We need your donations, even small ones, to fight back and win over those moderate voters.
Interesting. So it's a very classic appeal to fear and urgency, a very tried and true tactic to mobilize support. But then they actually went a step further.
Oh, really?
They encouraged their supporters to flood local media outlets with pre-written letters promoting One PAC's agenda.
Interesting.
And that's where I think some people started to get a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can see why it feels a little,
Yeah.
I don't know, manipulative, like they were trying to almost control the narrative instead of having an open conversation.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, it definitely suggests a very strong desire to shape public perception.
Right.
And whether you see that as strategic or shady really just depends on how you view One PAC's overall motives.
Right. And speaking of motives, this is where we start to see some cracks in that good guy image they'd so carefully cultivated.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So remember how One PAC was all about inclusivity and bringing the community together?
Yes, like actions speak louder than words, right?
Right. And that's where I think some of the loudest criticism started coming from.
Okay, so what were some of the specific issues that people raised?
Well, one of the biggest points of contention was the lack of diversity within One PAC's leadership itself.
Okay.
Critics, particularly those from communities of color, pointed out that, there was an absence of diverse voices at the top, despite One PAC's very public pronouncements about tackling racism and creating a welcoming environment for everyone.
So it kind of seemed like a classic case of do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly. And it sparked a really crucial debate.
Yeah.
Can a group truly represent and advocate for a diverse community if its own leadership doesn't reflect that diversity?
Right.
It made some people question the authenticity of One PAC's commitment to inclusion.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think, were there any specific incidents or examples that fueled this perception of elitism?
Well, aside from the lack of representation at the leadership level, some of their early social media posts, while highlighting issues of racism, were perceived as performative by some community members. It felt like they were using these issues more to score political points rather than engaging in genuine efforts to address them.
So instead of bridging that gap, their actions might have inadvertently widened it.
That's what some critics argued.
Okay.
And this ties into another major criticism that was leveled against One PAC.
Okay.
That their approach, despite their stated goal of unity, actually ended up creating more division within the community.
Wait, but I thought they were all about bringing people together.
Right.
How did that backfire?
Well, remember that Facebook post where they urged supporters to write letters to local media outlets about outside interference in local elections?
Yeah.
Even naming specific individuals that they deemed problematic?
Yeah, that one stuck out to me too.
Yeah.
It seemed a little aggressive, especially for a group that was championing unity.
Right, and that's exactly how a lot of people interpreted it.
Correct.
Critics saw it as fueling this mob mentality and discouraging real dialogue or debate instead of fostering understanding and collaboration.
Right.
They were essentially drawing battle lines and telling people who to be against.
So rather than building bridges, they were kind of reinforcing those existing divides?
That's the argument.
Okay.
And it led to accusations of One PAC engaging in a form of cancel culture, where dissenting voices were silenced or demonized instead of being engaged with constructively, which seemed very contradictory to their initial messaging of unity and open dialogue.
It's almost like they were saying, we're the good guys, so anyone who disagrees with us must be the bad guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the perception that started to take hold for some. And it ultimately raised this fundamental question. Were One PAC genuinely interested in unifying the community, or were they more concerned with consolidating their own power and influence?
It's a tough question, and I imagine it sparked a lot of debate in Temecula.
Absolutely, and it really highlights the complexity of local politics, especially when you have groups claiming a moral high ground.
Right.
Sometimes the lines between good intentions and questionable tactics can get blurred.
So where does this leave us in terms of answering that big question?
Yeah.
Were they the good guys?
Well, I don't think there's a simple yes or no answer.
Yeah.
It really depends on who you ask in Temecula.
So it's more nuanced than their initial presentation might have suggested.
Definitely. And this is where I think things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because this deep dive
Yeah.
isn't just about uncovering facts. It's
Right.
about encouraging you, the listener,
Right.
to think critically about the information presented
Yeah.
and draw your own conclusions.
I like that. It's not about us telling you what to think,
Right.
but giving you the tools to form your own informed opinion.
Exactly. And in the case of one PAC, there's a lot to consider.
Mm-hmm.
They entered the scene promising stability and unity using powerful rhetoric and strategic actions.
Right.
But as we've explored, their approach also raised concerns about elitism, manipulation, and a potentially divisive us versus them mentality.
So it's a mixed bag, to
Right.
say the least.
Yeah.
But it sounds like their story really gets to the heart of what the deep dive is all about. Looking beyond the surface and unpacking the complexities of seemingly straightforward narratives.
That's spot on.
Yeah.
Because whether you ultimately view one PAC as heroes or hypocrites or perhaps somewhere in between,
Right.
their story is a powerful reminder that even the most well-intentioned groups can be susceptible to the very problems they claim to be fighting against.
It's a cautionary tale that reminds us to always question those who claim to hold the moral high ground and to recognize that there are rarely easy answers in politics.
And on that note,
Yeah.
I'll leave you with one final question to ponder as you continue to explore the story of one PAC.
Okay.
Can a group that claims to be the solution also be part of the problem?
That's definitely something to think about. Welcome back to our deep dive into the story of one PAC. You know, we've been unpacking their rise, their messaging, and some of the controversies they faced.
Yeah.
And it's clear that their impact on Temecula was anything but simple.
No, and what's really fascinating to me is how this story kind of reflects this much larger trend that we're seeing in politics, both locally and nationally. It's this idea that complexity is often sacrificed for the sake of a good narrative.
Right, because it's so much easier to process things when they're neatly divided into good guys and bad guys.
Absolutely. And one PAC, with their, slick messaging and promises of unity, seemed to fit that good guy mold perfectly, at least initially. But as we've seen, the reality was much more nuanced. Their actions sometimes contradicted their rhetoric and their approach while resonating with some, alienated others.
It's a reminder that we should always be wary of those groups or individuals that present themselves as having all the answers, especially in the realm of politics.
Especially in politics, critical thinking is so crucial.
Right.
We need to look beyond the surface, question those who claim the moral high ground, be willing to engage with different perspectives, even those we might disagree with, because let's face it, the world is rarely black and white.
So what can we learn from the story of one PAC? What are some takeaways for our listeners who are kind of navigating this often confusing world of local politics?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is just the importance of staying informed and engaged. Don't just accept things at face value. Do your own research, attend those town hall meetings, read different sources of information.
Right. Don't just rely on social media or catchy slogans to form your opinions. Right. You really have to dig deeper.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions. If a group or a candidate is pushing a certain agenda, ask yourself, who benefits from this?
Right.
What are the potential downsides? Is there another side to the story?
It's all about being an active participant in your community and not just a passive observer.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, local politics impacts all of our lives.
Oh, right.
It affects our schools, our businesses, our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So the more informed and engaged we are, the better equipped we'll be to make decisions that truly benefit our community as a whole.
That's such an important point. And I think the story of one PAC, with all its twists and turns, really drives that home.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in a place like Temecula, local politics can be complex, messy, and full of surprises.
And that's what makes it so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It's a constant reminder that there's always more to learn, more to uncover, and more to discuss.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought. Whether you agree or disagree with one PAC's approach, their story really highlights the power of local action and the importance of making your voice heard.
Absolutely.
So get involved, stay curious, and keep asking those tough questions.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of Temecula politics.
We'll see you next time.